Alright, it's been a minute, but we're back and your boys finally caught up to covering One Piece as I done cooked up all 6 latest One Piece episodes in one, which I'll be giving the same luxury to Don Season 2 and Gachia Kuda. So expect heat on that very soon. Now grab your golden Oreos and pink lemonade. Them shits fire. Now on with the heat. So Kizaru pulls up to the lab and starts chatting with Vegapunk. Then later gets on a call with Saturn, who also starts chatting with Vegapunk and gave him the rundown on the additional conditions when it comes to Vegapunk's plan on making Kuma the base for his clone soldiers. One being Kuma joining the 7 warlords of the sea as a pirate, as Ace has been taken down from their role, so they're in need of another. 2, Kuma becomes the navy weapon himself. And 3, Kuma has to abandon his mind and free will, which had Vegapunk furious. But Kuma, being the greatest dad in fiction, will gladly do whatever it takes to make sure Bonnie gets well and accepts his fate. And once her surgeries are complete, Kuma will be forbidden to contact her or escape, and if the deal is broken, Bonnie will be enslaved. So Kuma lets Saturn know that he will comply and makes a request for Saturn to keep the truth about her disease a secret and the fact that she's a hostage, which Saturn also complies. Moments later, after the gang threw a party, Kuma sent Bonnie back home where she'll be taken care of by a nurse named Alpha. But unfortunately, Shawty just roleplaying that she really works for the world government and is twisted to the core as she threatens to snap Bonnie's neck if Kuma ever shows back up. So Kuma says his goodbyes to Bonnie and takes his leave. Years later, we see Kuma watch the GOAT Luffy undergo training, which Luffy ends up sensing Kuma's presence with observation haki as Kuma dips out of there, but unaware of what it actually was, as Luffy assumes it was just another strong beast for him to beat up. So after Kuma saves some people, he starts to write to Bonnie, but remember when I told you that the nurse was twisted? Yeah, all the letters Kuma's been sending to Bonnie, Alpha done got her hands on and tore them all to pieces before Bonnie could even know it's been sent. And even when she goes to give Bonnie medicine, it's only bitter candy. Meanwhile, Kuma is in the lab with Stussy as Vegapunk preps for the operation, which Vegapunk plans on letting Kuma keep a minimum level of free will until it's fully complete, and he has a year until then. So Kuma uses the time he has left to continue writing letters to Bonnie, letting her know that he loves her. And as he does, the gang celebrates Bonnie's birthday, and later that night, as Bonnie's checking the mailbox for Kuma's letter, there wasn't a single letter inside, which led Bonnie to burst out in tears. Moments later, Bonnie starts to rebel against the nurse who's trying to hold her till her 10th birthday, but Bonnie's trying to leave now as Vegapunk told her that she'll be cured within a year, which that time is now. But Alpha gripped Bonnie by the arm, not letting her leave anywhere. So later that night, Connie spilled the tea on who Alpha really is, letting everyone know that Alpha and her associates are government intelligence agents, and that Alpha's not really a nurse. So Connie told Bonnie that she already talked to Gyogyo and others, and that she needs to make it to port so that she can go out to sea and see her father, which Connie sets a plan in motion as the next morning we see Bonnie, who is disguised as Connie by wearing her clothes and manipulating her age. And Bonnie successfully fooled Alpha into thinking that it was Connie who was taking her leave. So Alpha's in a panic as she's in search for Bonnie, who made it to port where she sees Gyogyo and the gang who had a ship ready for her. But Alpha's now aware of the situation and makes her way to the port and towards the gang ready to violate. Now with Bonnie being afraid of that abusive bitch Alpha, she starts bawling up into tears until she locked in and transformed into an adult and was like, "Get that weak shit out of here," hitting her ass with that distorted future. The punch was so hard they had to run it back a couple times. Bonnie had Alpha looking like that fishman Usopp fought at Arlong Park. So Bonnie makes her way to a town where one of her crew members lets her know that Kuma is most likely there. And as they're in search for him, we see Kuma on the island aware of their presence, but is unable to see his daughter Bonnie due to the agreement he had with Saturn. So we didn't get a look at Kuma's perspective on the events that happened during the Straw Hat's journey, as well as Kuma looking after Bonnie, and while doing so, he put up to where the Straw Hats were making a ruckus and see that Luffy, being the dog he is, done knocked out one of the Celestials, as the rest of the Straw Hats were also fighting to protect the Fishman Hachan and the Mermaid Kami, who were up for auction. Such actions moved Kuma, which led Kuma to protect the entire Straw Hats and Sabaody, to then request that Vegapunk program him a mission after the operation to protect the Straw Hat ship until one of their crew members comes back, as he believes Luffy will be the one to make a great change in this world. And of course, Vegapunk accepts his wishes, and with that, after Kuma repelled his memories out his body, the operation had commenced. So we get hit with all of Kuma's memories, and once that was said and done, Kuma officially becomes a humanized weapon. Fast forward after Bonnie witnessed all of that from Kuma's memories and apologizing to Vegapunk, it pans back to the present day as Bonnie is furious with Saturn as she's within his clutches, and the gang is bound to the ground unable to move, and Luffy's drained in need of food. So Saturn plans on killing Bonnie, but Bonnie not going out without a fight and uses distorted future and said Nika like future had that man Saturn shocked at what he just heard. But unfortunately, that punch had no effect. So Saturn starts talking about how she hasn't made a connection between Nika and Luffy's white appearance, and speaking of the GOAT, we see Luffy going crazy, feasting on such exquisite delicacies thanks to the big homie Kizaru, who is role-playing, acting like he was down for the count. Meanwhile, Bonnie's in distraught, wondering why her ability isn't effective, which Saturn starts spilling the beans, letting her know that he gave her the power of the age fruit, and that her ability is weakening due to her starting to believe Nika isn't real, as well as tell everything that happened with Kuma and her mother Jenny, as he was the one who conducted drug experiments on Jenny, causing her to have sapphire disease, which Bonnie inherited from her. And as Saturn was running his mouth, Kuma pulled up to close that shit. Meanwhile, Vegapunk heating up at Saturn, but that nigga Saturn don't have a heart. So Kuma's ready to slide and fires light beams at the Marines, which they end up dodging one of the light beams, which is a crazy speed feed coming from them because they're just fodder Marines. And Saturn gets word that Kuma has arrived, meanwhile Bonnie's screaming in tears. Meanwhile, Kuma's getting lit up by the Navy soldiers but running through them shits because he's a different breed. So Saturn gives the order to shoot Bonnie in the head, but not on Kuma's Kuma's watch as he shoots light beams clearing out the Marines. So Saturn threw Bonnie and tried to boom her, but Kuma pulls up for the save. Now watch this man Kuma start aura forming as Saturn done tried to strike again, but Kuma grabbed his leg and held that pose for the flick. And now Saturn's about to learn a lesson for hurting a man's child and making her cry. As Kuma done went in for a punch so diabolical, niggas started losing color before he rocked Saturn's shit. Saturn had to lock in on Kuma for a split second to make sure this was reality. The hit was so crazy it even kicked in the intro song as well as a look into Kuma's past. And after Saturn was sun flying, Kuma and Bonnie had a daddy and daughter moment as the gang looks on as Bonnie thanks Kuma, letting him know that she's seen all his memories. And talks about how amazing her mom was and how she's seen all the letters Kuma wrote her. And tells her that even though everyone calls him a tyrant, she knows that he's the kindest and coolest person in the world. But now Saturn's back up and is in bad shape as a single punch from Kuma was powerful enough to run through his entire body and blow off his arm. But unfortunately Saturn can't regenerate and then tries to strike down on Kuma, which Bonnie tries to pull Kuma away but to no avail. So Sanji stepped in and stopped Saturn's attack, and in comes Frankie still trying to get a highlight with the reliable. But looks like it was Kizaru's cue to stop roleplaying and get active. So Frankie manages to damage Saturn with a radical beam, meanwhile Kizaru pulls up on Frankie kicking the shit out of bro. And Kuma is unable to move, so Vegapunk tells Atlas to carry him to Labo phase. And that nigga Frankie recovered quick as hell from that kick. So Frankie, Sanji, and Vegapunk was ready to face off against Saturn and Kizaru, but Vegapunk told them to slide and take care of Kuma and Bonnie. Now I'm not gonna hold you, Vegapunk really been standing on business. Bro got no hole in his blood, he a straight dog, that big So Kizaru tries to put a stop to them, asking Saturn if he's just gonna let them get away with that, but Saturn said he wasn't stressing it. And as Vegapunk and Kizaru got to chatting, Saturn imposed a buster call on Egghead. Then Saturn lets Vegapunk know that those who studied the secrets of the world, those who carried the blood of a lost race, and those who have awakened an ancient god are all inconveniences. So the baddie Vice Admiral Dahl pulls up telling Saturn and Kizaru to slide. But Saturn's like, nah, he cool, commence the bombardment. And Kizaru tells her to slide. Meanwhile, Vegapunk trying to convince them to call out the buster call, but to no avail. I feel bad for my nigga Kizaru, you can tell he don't want to go through with this. And Saturn lets Vegapunk know that he called a strike on the ship that escaped Egghead, had that man Vegapunk shocked. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, as the gang were making their escape, Sanji heads back to save Vegapunk and gets in contact with Nami, which she asks for the status on the situation on her side so she fills them in on everything. Meanwhile, the buster call has now commenced, as Vegapunk is watching completely torn from seeing his creation being destroyed as it's going up in flames. Meanwhile, Atlas and the gang were making their escape, which Kizaru peeps and pulled up moving fast as hell and whipped out the Amino Murakumo sword and extended the shit, then cuts off their pathway. So Sanji pulls up for the save as Saturn instructed the pacifista to shoot Bonnie and Kuma dead. So Kuma holds Bonnie in his arms to protect her as all the pacifistas have a charged light beam directed at the both of them. And again, you can see that Vegapunk is really torn about the entire situation as he really cares deeply about both Kuma and Bonnie, as he looks up staring at Bonnie and wondering why is it that the pacifistas are shooting Bonnie without recognizing her as their daughter. Meanwhile, on the other side of things, the warship that Saturn ordered to take out the ship that escaped Egghead has been destroyed, and failed to take out the targeted ship as a Marine soldier on a call says to tell Kizaru the ones who took down their warship is heading for Egghead. And yeah, those One Piece episodes 1134, 1135, 1136, 1137, 1138, and 1139 in all its greatness. You already know these few episodes are absolutely pure hate, a solid 10 out of 10 for me, cause One Piece never miss. Now, with that being said, if you made it this far, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. We moving. Also, I'm taking recommendations, bro, so hit the comments. And more heat on the way.